So the Women's World Cup started this week. All those cheers you heard last night from every house on your block, those were for the U.S. women's national team beating Australia 3-1 in their first game last night. The World Cup this year is in Canada, kicked off with Canada versus China. That game was played in Edmonton on Saturday. They had near perfect weather for that game, 75 degrees out, clear. It was beautiful. But look at this. Even though the temperature in the air was 75 degrees, the temperature on the field, the temperature of the field itself, was 120 degrees for the opening day on Saturday. The following day, on Sunday, for the games in Ottawa, the field was 130 degrees. 130 degrees. Just astonishing heat. You know, grass doesn't heat up like that. Only artificial turf heats up like that because it's plastic. Plastic with rubber backing. And even in nice days, it gets incredibly, dangerously hot. The other thing artificial turf does is it shreds your skin, which is nice. Here's U.S. forward Sydney Leroux tweeting out a shot of her own legs after a practice on artificial turf in 2013. She says in this tweet, "This is why soccer should be played on grass." Australian player Samantha Kerr posted this a month later, #TurfBurn. American Abby Wambach has scored more goals in international games than any American player in history, man or woman. And when she does score a goal, this is usually what she does, slides on both knees, woo, right? She will only do that on grass, though. She will not do that on turf, because if you do that on turf, it will shred you.
Playing on turf affects everything, you know. It affects the way the ball rolls. It affects the way the ball bounces. It affects the way you think about whether or not going into a slide tackle. Should I slide and toe poke this ball into the goal and deal with bloody knees, bloody hip bones? It's kind of a nightmare.
Playing on artificial turf, it's kind of a nightmare. Burns, bloody lacerations, layers of skin sheared off just for doing normal play stuff. Players in this Women's World Cup have been pulling their socks up over their knees. They've been smearing Vaseline on their legs. They've been wearing compression shorts to try to keep their thighs covered even when they slide, doing everything they can to try to protect themselves from this turf. Soccer, though, is inherently a rough game, and there's a lot of sliding around, and part of the worry with not letting them play on grass is an increased risk of concussions from banging their heads on this unforgiving artificial turf. World Cups are normally played on grass. The Men's World Cup is on grass, always has been, always will be. Before this year, the Women's World Cup had been played on grass. But this one, for the women, it's all on artificial turf, all 6 venues, every game. And frankly, that's because turf is cheap. Turf is cheaper to maintain than grass, and apparently FIFA does not care as much about the risks to the players in the women's game the way they care about the men. FIFA's former president, the guy who recently resigned in the midst of this huge criminal corruption scandal, he said in the past that the women's game would be improved if women wore tighter uniforms while they played. He also said he thinks that artificial turf is the future, with added benefits such as cheapness. Ahead of this World Cup, the players sued, trying to get grass fields instead. They ended up withdrawing their suit when it became clear FIFA wasn't going to budge on the issue for this World Cup. But because of their loud objections, FIFA promised that they would never do this again, for women or for men. It is ridiculous that this year they are making the best women's players in the world compete on 120-degree, 130-degree rubber and plastic on top of concrete. But because of the way they stood up for themselves and fought it, this World Cup will be the last time that ever happens. They will never again play on turf after this World Cup because they fought it. The next U.S. game is against Sweden on Friday. I believe that we will win.